Let me get on with my next guest. This gentleman has been on the program before, and all I can say is that his artwork is amazing. He's blessed by God to have the talent that he has. His bio, and just give you a little overview. Of course, our guest is Tony Strublic. He's always been a huge fan of ships, whether they have been ocean liners or Great Lakes vessels. As a child, his fascination with Titanic led him to begin using his artistic abilities to draw and paint the famous ship. Before long, he had many, many paintings of the Titanic. However, his love for painting began to fade. In 2009, he began to produce fine, detailed pictures of Great Lakes ships, most notably the Edmund Fitzgerald. Tony's first break came in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, at the Alberta House Gallery with a month-long show in the summer of 2011. The following year, he began entering several juried art shows, winning honorable mention in two of them. In 2013, Tony won another two honorable mentions, as well as the Best Local Artist Award for Art for All in Menominee, Michigan. His main focus is on the freighters of the Great Lakes. He's also been expanding his drawing into lighthouses, Navy and Coast Guard vessels, and ocean liners. Of course, he prouds himself in the uniqueness of his work by creating an original drawing for many different photographs. His most notable subject, of course, is the ill-fated Edmund Fitzgerald. However, he has a wide variety of different works. He also works on commission and will attempt any challenge. His inspiration comes from his parents, who are both talented woodworking craft artists, and Ken Marshall, widely respected as the visual expert artist of Titanic. Tried to get Ken on the program. In the winter months, when he's not drawing ships or doing his art, he is the co-owner of a bowling center in Wisconsin. He drills bowling equipment at his pro shop called the Bowling Store. His website is amazing, and his artwork is even more amazing. It's absolutely. I came across his stuff. His website is greatlakesartwork.webs.com. You can go check out his portfolio and everything he does, and he's just such a talented man. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get Tony on the phone. Tony, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk and Fringe Radio, my friend.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for having me on again. It's good to be back.
Well, you deserve to be on. Your work. I've been watching your stuff come through Facebook, and you're picking up quite a few awards.
Yeah, actually, the latest one that I received was actually a Best of Show. The first time that's ever happened to me, it was in Escanaba, Michigan, at a show called the Waterfront Art Festival, and I was quite happy. That was the first time that I had ever gotten something like that.
So why don't you? I had you on before, Tony, because again, I have such an interest in maritime disasters such as Titanic and Edmund Fitzgerald, among others, and I'm sure you do yourself, mm-hmm. which probably draws you to draw them. But why don't you give our listeners a little bit of overview? Of course, I gave your bio, but you started painting Titanic at a pretty young age.
Yeah, I was late teens when I started doing that, and then kind of when I went to college, I did a little bit more of it. I used acrylics on canvas board, and I did it for probably about 3 or 4 years, and then, like you had said in the bio, I just kind of got away from it and started looking for something that was a little bit different and something that you don't see a whole lot of. And I think drawing was something that I kind of stumbled across, literally searched for it online, and I didn't find a whole lot of it. It's out there, but from what I wanted to do, try to create realism with the artwork. I didn't really see that, so I thought, hey, maybe this is the niche. So that's where it kind of came from.
Are you drawn more toward the shipwrecks, or do they interest you as much
as? Shipwrecks are fascinating. There's always a story behind it. The people that can tell the story, or even the shipwrecks that have no survivors. But I actually I create drawings of the ships as they were when they sailed. I haven't really gotten into depicting them on the bottom. Now, I did have a commission just recently that I just finished for. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this gentleman named John Chatterton, and he is a wreck diver, and he's been to the wreck of the Britannic. He's been to the Titanic, the Andrea Doria, and that's what this commission was. It was actually a depiction of the Andrea Doria on the bottom, roughly around the early 80s. And he wanted a drawing of that. And it was a new challenge. I've never done anything like that before. And I think it turned out quite well. They're very happy with it. So I guess that's all that matters.
Yes. My grandmother was a survivor of the Andrea Doria wreck.
No kidding.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Shame that in a beautiful ship, too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And there's not much left of it right now.
Really?
From what I heard, that most of the ship is collapsed in on itself, and there isn't a whole lot more to really see. You know, it's unfortunate to think that the Titanic has been on the bottom for 103 years, and the Andrea Doria has only been on the bottom since 1956, and the Titanic is actually in better condition. So
is the Andrea Doria in much warmer waters, though? Correct?
Yeah, and it's only. I can't quote the exact depth right now, off the top of my head, but I know it's less than 500 feet, and that I think has a lot of impact in that.
Yeah, because well, and the other thing is, of course, at Titanic's depth, I mean, 500 feet is deep for sure, but at
Right.
Titanic depth, it takes specialized equipment and millions of dollars to get there, where some of these other wrecks, even Britannic, I believe, those can...
They're only 400 feet down.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Yeah, and Britannic is, it's amazing that researchers don't talk much about that ship, but
Right.
watching a program on Nova when Bob Ballard, of course, the guy that found Titanic, dove on Britannic, he said it is Titanic. It's an exact, that's the Titanic laying on its side, and yet
Right.
people view it so differently,
Yeah. Well, it never didn't have the mystique. It didn't have, it never carried a passenger. It was, a hospital ship in World War I, and it really was unknown because during that time they tended to keep things like that kind of hush-hush when something like that would happen. And, the Titanic was all over the world, front page news, and the Britannic had a small, corner of the bottom of the newspaper when it happened. So, it was just a drastic thing. But the nice thing is, though, that it's finally becoming more well-known, I think, through internet, through historians, artists, things like that. So it's nice to see that.
Yeah, I'm looking actually at a picture of the Andrea Doria here that was taken, this was back in 2005, and the whole superstructure is gone. I would imagine that even now, 10 years later, it's got to be even in worse shape.
Oh, yeah, by far. The deterioration has just accelerated just drastically. So.
Unbelievable. What about Edmund Fitzgerald?
Well, I actually, it's funny you say that because I feel like I should have the Gordon Lightfoot song playing in the background because I'm actually, right now I'm at an art show in a town called Paradise, Michigan, which is about 11 miles from Whitefish Point, which is where the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum is, which is dedicated not only to the Great Lakes shipwrecks, but more of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Because the Fitzgerald lies about 17 miles northwest of where Whitefish Point is. So I'm really close to the actual area right now. So it's funny you bring that up because I'm very close to the spot.
Because Edmund Fitzgerald it sank within seconds and within actual visual range of the shore. Right.
And then it was actually the ship behind it, the Arthur M. Anderson, that had it on radar. And, literally seconds passed, and the ship was gone off the radar. No signal, nothing, just gone. That's the most amazing part.
Do you believe, Tony, that ship just broke in half and went down just like that?
Well, I actually got an opportunity to meet a historian named Frederick Stonehouse, who wrote a book called The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And this is the 40th anniversary year of that. And I got to meet him in Marquette, Michigan at an art show. And I asked him that question. I said, what do you think? What do you really think? Because he doesn't really say what he thinks in the book. He lays all the theories out. But he subscribes to the theory, and I actually had been telling people the same thing, that most likely the Fitzgerald grounded on a shoal as it was traveling. Its radars were out, and they didn't have an accurate fix of where they were. And so I think that, and he thinks the ship gradually just took on enough water that when the ship went, the waves were 25 to 30 feet high. When the ship went up a wave, and went down into the trough, instead of coming back up, it just kept going down to the bottom. It lost enough buoyancy, and that was it.
So
No warning, and that was it.
So it actually got damaged and sailed on for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. But they reported that the ship had taken on a list, and that they had a fence rail down, and that they were missing some vent caps on their ballast tanks. And, this was all after they passed that shoal area. And there was no reported damage before that. They didn't say they were taking water on before that. So, I said, 1 + 1 is 2 on that, I think.
Right.
And there's always, everybody will always have their own theory, but I think that, to me, makes the most sense.
And then the ship either sunk or broke in half, because it is in 2 pieces, correct?
It is, but I think that because of the water was 530 feet that the ship went down in, and the ship is 730 feet long. So when the ship did just go down to the bottom, the bow struck into the clay, and the ship was full of taconite, 26,000 tons, and I think that force of that just continuing on when the ship was trying to stop, helped to twist the middle section into just ribbons of steel, and the stern flipped upside down because of the action of the propeller still trying to move the ship. So that's why the bow is upright, the middle section is a jumbled mess, and the stern is upside down.
Wow, amazing. The Anderson, is that ship still in service today?
Yes, it is. It actually didn't sail. It came into layup in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin in March, I believe, and they didn't sail it at all this summer. And everybody has a theory. Well, is it going to be taken out of service and scrapped? And there's no immediate plans, amongst the people that know about the ships. There's no immediate plans to do that. They just the company actually, from what I have been told, sits out a ship every year, and this was the Anderson's year. So, gotcha. But the Anderson will still continue to sail.
Well, there's a lot of people. I'm from Chicago. We used to have a summer home up in Saugatuck, Michigan, and I've been up to Sault Ste. Marie and up, all up and down the coast there, and just going down. It's amazing. I used to, when I was back home, from time to time, I would go to down to Gary, to the ports down there where all these big ships are. And a lot of people throughout the country, I don't think they realize the enormity. Like, of course, the Edmund Fitzgerald wasn't much smaller than Titanic.
Yeah, the Titanic was 882 feet long. The Edmund Fitzgerald was 729. So it wasn't that much smaller.
Right. And, when you look at it, of course, Titanic was very tall, in comparison, and of course with the big stacks made her look even bigger. But some of these Great Lakes freighters, and a lot of them, I know I think there's a website out there called Boat Crazy or something I came across that is dedicated to all of these, the history of these Great Lakes vessels. They've been around for a long time, and they've got some unbelievable stories.
Right. The website is boatnerd.com.
That's it, boatnerd.com.
Yeah, you can go on there. You can read, history on each vessel. You can look at the different fleets that are out there, where they're sailing to, the different ports. It's a really nice site. They have a lot of stuff on there.
We've got a couple questions for you, Tony. Let me just go ahead and get these pushed out to you. Carol from California is listening. She says, has Tony ever heard of the ship called the Edward Buckley, a lumber ship that traveled Portage Lake in Manistee, Michigan, through the channel into Lake Michigan? Have you ever heard of the Edward Buckley?
Unfortunately, I have not. I'm assuming that if it was a lumber vessel, it was probably in the 1800s. That's when they were called lumber hookers that sailed, from port to port with stacks and piles of lumber on their decks. At that time the lumber industry was so big that right. And the ships weren't very big,
right? And
they had to move it however they could. So I'm assuming that's when it was. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I haven't heard of that one. No. Gotcha.
The other question was, what is the oldest ship that you've drawn?
Actually, a steamer called the Pewabic. It was passenger ship that sailed on Lake Superior, and it was sunk in 1865. It was actually, ironically, it was ran by a sister ship and sunk. So yeah, that's the oldest one that I've done.
Gotcha. Another question was, have you ever drawn a picture of a ship um, by someone's memory? Have you ever drawn a picture of a ship that you've never seen before? Maybe by someone sitting down and just describing something to you.
No, I haven't done that. The way I create them, like you had said in the bio, is more or less using photographs for the reference to create them. But I haven't actually ever tried that. You know, I guess it'd be kind of interesting to attempt. You know, it'd be like a sketch artist in a
Right.
police station. So.
Well, you know, and in the Great Lakes, there's a lot of shipwrecks out there. I mean, there's a lot of course, you know, the Fitzgerald is probably the one that everybody remembers.
Yeah, that's the most sad.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of other ones actually off the coast of Wisconsin. You know, off the Wisconsin shores and the Illinois shores. There's quite a few wrecks out there.
Well, they just found a wreck in Lake Michigan off of Muskegon, which is the western side of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And they found the wreck called the John V. Moran, and it sunk 116 years ago, and it was a steamship, and it was crushed. It was crushed in the ice as it sank, and they found it in amazingly intact condition. But that's what fresh water does. It
Right.
preserves a lot better than salt water. But yeah, there are so many, and they continue to find wrecks, you know, all the time. So,
Downed aircraft. I know, and I don't know if that's the one you were talking about. I remember, of course, I read the Chicago Trib, and I watched, you know, the news and stuff on WGN. But I believe there was it I don't know if it was a Coast Guard helicopter or something that this year, because of all of the ice and stuff, actually the lake was quite clear. And they were flying over, and they were, at least I believe that might have been the one wreck that nobody ever mapped out. And if that's the one I'm thinking, I think it was a Coast Guard helicopter that found it, or photographed it on the bottom.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I've heard that. I know that they take out side scan sonar, and they search for shipwrecks on the bottom of the lakes. And you know, but it's quite tough when you've got such a small little piece of equipment trying to, you know, locate something basically like a needle in a haystack. You know, It's not something that's just, you know, and a lot of times they don't even have accurate positions of where these things have sunk, so they don't really have a great place to start, so they're guessing.
Exactly. So you've been going to a lot of different events. I've been watching your Facebook page, and you're kind of you're all over the place this summer.
Yeah, this is actually the last show I'm doing this year. This is the 12th show, so that's, you know, from Memorial Weekend to now. You know, that's a lot of traveling. I've gone as far as Duluth, Minnesota, and Ludington, Michigan. So, you know, it's a fair distance that I've traveled.
Are you getting ready for all the winter leagues are going to be starting up pretty soon? So I would assume that your business is. It's time to get back in the pro shop and
yeah.
and start punching holes.
Yeah, we've got, you know, the next 2 weeks, right after Labor Day is when we start our bowling, and you know, so all our leagues will be back full time. So, you know, it's kind of it's a perfect transition, because this ends and that starts up. So, you know, there's, you know, not a lot of downtime for me. So, you know, but it's good, you know, get everybody back in there and get going, and before you know it, the snow will be flying. So, you know, there won't be much to do by us anyway, other than bowl.
Yeah. Are you going to take a break over the winter months from your artwork, or do you just keep on going when you have a little bit of time?
Well, I think I'm actually going to continue. I'm still working on some commission pieces right now, and I believe I have 3 left to finish, and you know, I actually have to start thinking about next summer. What am I going to, you know, what drawings am I going to do? What freighters am I going to have? And, you know, so make a list and start getting it right away, because once the show season starts, it's really hard for me to keep up sometimes with having original artwork, you know, ready to go. So if I can get ahead of the game, that's better.
One question, one of our listeners, we got a group of people that are up at there's a bunch of engineering students up at the U, and they listen. They've been following us since day one. And
Hmm.
Terry writes in, she says, Tony, have you ever considered doing any sort of angelic type drawings with these ships? Possibly her example is, the Edmund Fitzgerald looking nose to nose with the Anderson, or any type of, I think what she's asking for is kind of spiritual type drawings of
Yeah,
ships that
well,
have passed.
maybe kind of an ironic type thing, you know. It's funny that you mentioned that because I have done some pieces of the Fitzgerald and the Anderson actually passing one another. So, kind of like at one point or many times during the cruise, I'm sure that they've passed each other, and so I thought, why not have a drawing of the two ships doing that? And I also did another one of just the bow of the Fitzgerald and the bow of the Anderson kind of meeting, like in the river, and it's a nice picture. So it's always gotten really positive response. So, but yeah, something like that. Yeah, I've done that before. So, and I'm not opposed to doing more of that. So.
Well, people like that. They do, and I think
Hmm.
it's the respect too for, for those that have passed. Have they ever, with Fitzgerald? Did they ever find any? Did they ever recover any of the crew at all?
Well, there was an expedition in 1994, I believe, or 95, I think it was. And they did locate a body on the bottom near the Fitzgerald's bow. However, they couldn't confirm nor deny that it is from the Fitzgerald. The condition of the remains, it seems to be that the remains they seem to be a little older than what would be, for the time that it's passed, and the clothing that the body had on it, so that's a little bit. They figured because there are so many wrecks around the area, and then I'm not saying they're right next to each other, but currents and things like that may have pushed a body away from another wreck towards the Fitzgerald. There's no way to say for sure. But other than that, they've never even seen any remains, peering through the portals and the windows, even in the pilot house. They've never seen any remains or bodies or anything like that. So they're all most likely they're entombed in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Which is very very it's something that especially the families have said that they don't want the site disturbed because it's a gravesite, and really it is. They're all there.
Yeah.
So
Isn't there if I'm not mistaken, isn't Fitzgerald one of those dive locations that I mean it's off limits if I'm not you can't scavenge it. I mean I believe it
right.
is it owned by one of the cities or something, and it's just off limits to be around.
Well, it's not really owned by any like a city or anything, but there was legislation passed, and part of it was because of the body that they found, that they didn't want any more diving, or first of all, they didn't want any video released of that because they couldn't confirm it, or deny it. But they also said that they didn't want any more diving done on the Fitzgerald, and it's something that it's a valid point. There's honestly not a whole lot you can probably learn at this point because there were no witnesses, there were no survivors, so you can't ask anybody, and the theories are all out there.
Right.
But I just I kind of agree with the families regarding that. Early on, yeah, but it is a memorial to those men.
Well, one thing I have, like yourself, I have been a fan of Titanic. I think so many of us are fascinated by the ship. Maybe not the younger generation today, but people in our age bracket are so fascinated. And it was I remember watching that program back in 1986. I can remember the night when I believe it was. I think it might have been History Channel or one of them aired.
National Geographic.
That's it, right?
I know which one you're going to too.
Martin Sheen narrated
Yep.
it, and that's when
Titanic,
right. That's when Bob Ballard found it, and I mean, I think the world was amazed because even up to that point, until that program was released, there was really no photos or video ever released. Of course, the internet wasn't what it is today, but I remember seeing that ship for the first time. Boy, it was awestruck to see that vessel, and I feel it's kind of sad that so many outfits have gone down and have taken so much off. Yes, it's good to see the artifacts. I did see the Titanic exhibit in Vegas, one of the bigger ones that came through Las Vegas, and to touch that steel is amazing, to know that it was down there. But yet the ship has been really looted. I mean, I believe, there's even been some damage done, them trying to get some of the things off of it.
Well, I think that the best thing that had been done was the James Cameron expeditions with the little ROV robots that he sent into the interior.
Yeah.
And which, yeah, they probably bumped a few things here and there, knocked some rust off in places, but they also gave people what they've always wanted to see. What would it still look like inside? Right. And Robert Ballard had said that all the woodwork was gone. There wasn't anything left to see, and James Cameron proved everybody wrong. By going down in there and finding woodwork on the columns and in the ceiling, and light fixtures still hanging in the ceilings, and
right.
It was quite amazing. But as far as the recovery of the artifacts, I've kind of gone both directions with that. At first, I didn't really agree at all, but seeing them in person, knowing that was actually from the Titanic, it was very awe-inspiring.
Right.
So I've been down both roads, and I kind of not really decided, I guess, on what's really right and what's really wrong. But it's great to see those things. But I don't really know, I guess.
Well, and Cameron really, and you hit it on the head, Tony. Cameron gave everybody. Some of those, I know, look, I remember watching all those programs. Well, they were just done, and they're on YouTube. Anybody can watch them now. Getting into some of those cabins where, believe it or not, the cabin almost looked intact. I mean, the fireplace was there. The mantle was there. It's amazing considering that ship plunged 14,000 feet at now what they're saying is quite an excessive speed. You'd figure everything would have been blown to pieces, but it all settled.
Well, the greatest example of what you just said there is one of the cabins that he got into was the one Isidore and Ida Strauss had stayed in, and they had the mantle and the fireplace that James Cameron actually modeled his cabin off of for Jack and Rose. He modeled that off of that suite, off of that fireplace, and he went and he found the actual fireplace.
Right.
And when he got in there was a clock sitting on top of the mantle, still sitting there. After all that time, after all, plunging through the ocean at all that speed, that clock was sitting there on that mantle, which is, it should have been flung across the room,
right.
And, not been there, but it was there. So, and some of the you could actually see some of the numerals in the clock still. So that's just an amazing thing.
Well, yeah, and then he did. I think that was tied with the same series where they built that big collage of the ship that it looked like it was about 40 feet long, where they went through all the different theories because, of course, I think that I kind of think Titanic's sinking. I think there's still a little bit more to it. I know one thing that they did talk about is they found sections of the they found sections of the bottom kind of in some strange places. And when Titanic hit that iceberg, I think there's still some controversy. Did it scrape and open the rivets up, or possibly did it leave a gaping hole?
Ground. Yeah.
Right, because so many experts believe that even with the scraping and the damage, the ship sank in a little over an hour. It should have held buoyancy for 5 to maybe 8 hours, and it went down so quickly.
The problem with it was the length of the damage. That it was such a long. It was over 300 feet of the hull, which is a third of the length of the ship, and there was just too many openings that were letting water in, and it was the ship actually survived, I think, maybe a lot longer than a lot of even the designer, Thomas Andrews, was asked by the captain, "How long do you give us?" And he said an hour and a half, possibly two, and the ship survived for 2 hours and 40 minutes.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
It actually stayed a lot longer than he had even thought, and he was the expert on that ship. He could have told you where every single rivet was.
Right.
And so I think that there are, like you said, there's so many different theories about the damage, and honestly, we'll never really know. It's like the Evan Fitzgerald, we'll never really know.
Yeah.
Even though there were witnesses with the Titanic, but it's just one of those things that we'll always wonder about.
Yeah, and I found in that Cameron series, what I thought was interesting is when he was talking about where the ship actually broke. Of course, he took that from a few. I believe he did dive to Titanic before he made his movie. But then his discussions of, when I re-release this thing, should I redo all the graphics because the split was actually in quite a different place.
Right, and he said he could nitpick every little thing and he could reshoot that whole movie.
Right.
But, he decided to leave it as it was. And even the angle of the ship when it broke, was a much different angle than they had thought. And he decided to leave it as it was. The only thing he did change was some of the star positions in the sky.
Right.
Which I find kind of interesting that he would do that and leave the rest of it alone. But, yeah, he decided to leave it as it was, so...
Another question that was sent in, Tony, is one of our listeners wanted to ask: have you ever done drawings for like History Channel or National Geographic, any of the programs on TV?
No, I haven't actually done that yet. But there are possibilities that an image or two may end up in some upcoming books on some ocean liners. So I can't give any more details than that, but. Other than for like television shows, no, I haven't been approached. I guess, whether I guess they know if I exist or not. That's the thing. But I haven't had any of that yet.
Well, they need to find out about you. Let's talk a little bit about another amazing thing that I find so amazing is your lighthouse drawings. They're absolutely beautiful. A lot of history to lighthouses.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes.
And especially on the Great Lakes, I think everybody thinks that they only exist on the on the ocean's coasts, but the Great Lakes have unbelievable. I mean, there's just so many of them, and you offer quite a few of those too.
Well, there are approximately, and I think if I count them all, if you go out and count them, there's over 250 lighthouses all around all 5 Great Lakes, and I think that includes like Georgian Bay, which is off Lake Huron. And I've drawn a fraction of that. I mean, there are so many that I could draw, and I wish it was possible for me to have all of them, but I try to depict ones that are like near areas I'm going for shows. I try to, do stuff that's popular to that area, but I also, I still have the collection that I've drawn from other shows, and, so there's quite a variety there, so.
Well, your work is again, it's absolutely stunning with what you do. Have you had the opportunity to go in a lot of these lighthouses? Have you had the opportunity to get inside and take a look? Because I know some of them are. I believe with today's technology, a lot of them don't need to be manned anymore. There's nobody filling, lighting candles. I mean, it's all automated now. Have you had the opportunity to go inside some of them?
Only a few. I haven't really been able to climb a lot of those. Now, the Whitefish Point Lighthouse, which is right near where I'm at right now, they have the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum with that, and they offer a tour where you can go up through the tower and view out from the where the actual lantern house is, and that's quite impressive. They take you up there and they show you, they point you to where the Evan Fitzgerald is out there, and you would be surprised how high that really is. It's way up there. But other than that, I really haven't been in very many lighthouses. More or less, the images that I draw, I get those from photographs that I research. So I haven't really been through a lot of them.
Interesting. Another question is one of our listeners from the Pittsburgh area writes in and says, "Can you ask Tony what are his thoughts on a ship called the Mary Celeste?"
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with it. I know a little bit about it. I know the Mary Celeste was, I think, like more or less like ghost ship, if I remember correctly. And I guess I'm, kind of trying to pull the facts out from the top of my head here, but
Oh no.
it was it was a schooner, and I believe that the crew was either totally gone from the ship, and they found the ship just basically abandoned, and nobody could figure out what happened to the crew. So, I think there's a very strange story. I think there's been a lot of stories written about it, like ghost stories. So, but I know the Mary Celeste is it's intriguing, So there's a lot more I probably should learn about it before I can give you any more info.
No. Well, I mean, there's so much maritime history out there. And again, I want to throw this out for our listeners. Again, Tony's website is greatlakesartwork.webs.com, and people can buy your drawings right online, very affordable for the quality of work. I mean, they should be 10 times what you're charging. But
thank you.
No, they should. They should. And I say that because again, I am just I'm amazed at what you do, and I post up a lot of times and tell people quite frequently on the program, if you want to get a gift for somebody, go out there and look at this site. And you don't even need to live in the Great Lakes area.
No.
There's so many. If someone's doing a nautical theme office or bedroom or something, this stuff is absolutely great to hang on your walls.
Yeah, and I ship anywhere in the world. I've shipped as far as Australia, and so I mean it will go anywhere you need it to go.
Yeah, I know of one that needs to go to Utah when you get a chance.
Yeah, I know. I've kind of been a slacker on that, I think.
No, I know you're busy. I'm just teasing.
I'm gonna get you a signed print of the Titanic out to you. So
I know you're busy.
In your office there.
I'm just joking. I just love your artwork, and like I said, that when I came across it, when I first started talking with you, I said I got to get you on the program. People are like, "What? He's an artist. We're not talking about UFO." I said, hey,
right.
it's we're talking about history. We're talking about all these different things, and again, it's so interesting. And I think, like a lot of people don't realize, we talk about the great oceans, but the Great Lakes, like in the case of the Edmund Fitzgerald, you talk to some of the mariners, they'll take the North Atlantic on any day compared to Lake Michigan during rough times.
Oh, exactly. The waves are coming at you from 3 different directions on the Great Lakes most of the time. The oceans are big swells, and there's a lot of distance between those. But Great Lakes, a storm can kick up fast, and it can get bad out there. And ask anybody that's been out on the lakes on a freighter in a storm. They'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, what's really amazing is there's a website out there called Earth Cams, and they've got cams up in they've got actually in St. Joseph, Michigan. They got a cam on Lake Michigan on the beach. There's one up in South Haven, Michigan, or Grand Haven, Michigan. And then, of course, there's a couple in Chicago that are out over they're live real-time cams. And what's really amazing is you can look at a live cam of Chicago on a sunny day, and then go ahead and look at the one in Grand Haven, and see 4-foot waves in Grand Haven with the wind blowing, and it's calm on the other side. And being a boater for many, many years, I've been on that lake, and I'll tell you what, I've been scared senseless a few times. Even being near the shore in like a 25 or 30-foot, sport boat, of how quickly, the temperature can just drop to, I mean, it'd be 95 degrees and then it's 70, and all of a sudden you're looking at, 5-6 foot breakers that are 12 feet apart.
Yeah, it happens real quick. I mean, there's been a lot of shipwrecks, older ships that have been sunk in a quick storm pops up, and there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to run.
Right.
You know, you're out there, and something happens, you're in trouble. You know, there's no, you know, can't run to a harbor, you know, if you're in the middle of a lake. So
Another question is, what do you do your work in? Watercolor, charcoal, ink, pastels, pencil? What's your favorite medium?
well, the medium I use is graphite pencil. That's all I've been working with. I've had people ask me, you know, would you consider doing color? And I said, really no, because I want to maintain the difference between the other artists out there. And, you know, and I know there are other pencil artists out there. But as far as painters and photographers, and, you know, there's a lot of that. And that's why I got into the pencil, because I wanted to try to do something a little different. So that, I guess that's why.
Yeah. Well, no, it's again, the work is in the detail that you can get from the pencil, and especially, you know, I look at your drawings, and I mean the windows. Just look at Titanic. I mean, they're perfectly square. When I look at your stuff, I'm like, man, how's he drawn this stuff this small?
And you know, the other thing I do too, you know, when I frame an original, most often I'll take when I mat the picture, I'll incorporate color from the ship into the mat.
Okay.
So, like in a drawing I did of the Titanic, I matted that in the funnel colors. I did the outer mat was black, and then the inner was the buff color that the smokestacks were. You know, the Edmund Fitzgerald, I used the rust and the cream color. That was the company was called Oglebay Norton, and that, you know, the colors were on the ship. So you get the color of the ship not in the picture, but the mat surrounding it. So you actually, you know, that's what sometimes it's a great selling piece, is the fact that there is color there. It's just not drawn in there.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, again, the detail is just absolutely amazing. Carl writes in, another listener of ours sent in an email to me, says, has Tony ever considered doing a shipyard, like a lot of I think what he's saying, a lot of the Great Lakes ships end up parking together. Have you ever considered doing a multiple ship type drawing in a yard or a layup area?
I'm sure I would. I guess it's never really crossed my mind, but I'm sure that I would definitely be able to do something like that. I guess I just haven't had the either the inspiration or the requests for that. Something like that would, you know, definitely take a little more time. You know, normally I can do a freighter drawing in, you know, roughly 15 to 20 hours.
Right.
And an ocean liner usually 25 to 35. And that's not obviously sitting down the entire time working on it. It's an hour here and there, but, you know, it's something that would take a little bit more time, but I'm definitely open to trying something like that.
Now, again, your talent is God-given, my friend, and it's what you do is amazing. One other question I had for you. God, we're almost an hour's almost burned up. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I know. That goes by quick.
It does. It does. Two guys from the Midwest talking about boats.
Right.
Another question is, how do you keep, now again with pencil, how do you keep these? I know you've told me before, you don't do it, you usually don't sit down, and it takes, there's so much time and effort. You don't just sit down and do it in 10, I mean, these are monumental projects. But how do you keep it from getting dirty and the pencil marks, and, you know, I mean, that's a feat in itself.
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's very easy to smudge pencil, and especially with the softer leads that, you know, I'll use for smokestacks and the hull, and, you know, it's a process I've tried to come up with to keep my hand out of the way, you know, completing a certain area, working a certain direction to try to stay out of the way so it doesn't, you know, you don't get that smudge. And it happens. I mean, you still are going to smudge, but
right.
Not, you know, I guess not nearly as much as I probably could.
Well, yeah, that's got to be it's just got to take a lot of time to make sure you're not smudging it all over or smearing it all over the paper.
Right, and it does take some time, and, you know, I go through a lot of erasers. Don't get me wrong, you know, it doesn't always stay clean, and it's, you know, and I'll go through and touch those areas up to keep them clean and white, and however they need to be.
Exactly, exactly. Let's throw out your website for people if you're looking. First of all, asking all my listeners to support Tony in his work. He does some beautiful stuff. His website is greatlakesartwork.webs.com. You can go out there and you can actually buy. You can scroll through what's available and buy the prints. Again, they're very, very affordable, extremely affordable. And you can buy it right off his website, and
Right.
he'll get them out to you. Do you ever sell them as framed prints, or just people frame it on their own?
I can. If people can request that. If they contact me, I can go over the options that I have for framing, and they can definitely do that. Most of the time, I think people just buy the print and they do it themselves. But occasionally, somebody wants to have it done already, so then they can either give it as a gift or put it on their wall right away. So I want to mention something, too, that
Sure.
If anybody wants to keep up with me on Facebook, they can go facebook.com/Tony Strublic Maritime Artwork. I post periodically, well, actually very often. I like to put updates of pieces that I'm working on, and I know you've seen that.
Yes.
Pieces that I've either just finished or pieces that are partially finished, and I like to do that so people can see, something in progress. They can actually see it being done, and I guess more or less just proof that it's a real, it's a real work in progress. It's not something that's just mass duplicated or computer made.
Right.
It's handmade. Everything's hand done.
Right. Well, Tony, our hour has flown, and I'll stay in touch with you. I'd like to get the name of some of those, especially the people. I'd love to get an Edmund Fitzgerald expert on, the gentleman that you met up at the show, and maybe in the fall, if you get some time, or in the winter, we could get a couple maritime experts on, and if you have time to sit in for an hour or two, we could all chat. And
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
I
would
love those
that.
subjects. Yeah, if you could send me his info on Facebook through message, I'd love to get him on the show, because I've done a lot of looking for Edmund Fitzgerald experts, and a lot of them have passed on. They wrote books, back in the late '70s, but they're no longer around, and the subject has kind of been dropped.
Well, I think this guy is definitely the guy. Like I was saying, his name is Frederick Stonehouse, and not only is he an expert on what he, on the ship, but he is one heck of a nice guy. So,
and that's Frederick Stonehouse.
Frederick Stonehouse. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
he's the leading authority on the subject.
I'll have to look him up and see if maybe Mr. Stonehouse would give us some time. Tony, take care, my friend. God bless you. Keep on drawing, and we'll stay in touch, and have fun where you're at, and sell, and I'll push your sales as much as I can for you.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and thanks again for having me on, and I hope to do it again soon.
Oh, we will. We will before Christmas time.
All righty.
All right, Tony, take care. Good night.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.